Yo, what's going on, guys? And today we'll be talking about a report coming from Anthony Slater and Marcus Thompson, the second of The Athletic. And the report that we're discussing today is the Warriors and Jonathan Kuminga expected to explore sign and trade scenarios. So I'd like to hear what you guys have to say. What should they do? How much is he worth? I think he's probably going to be either the full mid-level exception, at most somehow 20 million if the Nets do it, or he just accepts the qualifying offer. Now, let me read you the quote from The Athletic. Quote, "It's nearly impossible to believe Lacob would let Kuminga sign an offer sheet elsewhere and walk away with nothing. A reunion between the sides is still on the table," league sources said. But both sides are expected to explore sign and trade scenarios, those sources said, which would open up the market and theoretically give Kuminga the contract and fresh start he'd desire while bringing the Warriors back rotation players of immediate value. The Warriors' decision makers believe they need more positional size across the board, center and otherwise, end quote, The Athletic writes. Look, I agree with Anthony Slater and Marcus Thompson. I think we're hearing the Brook Lopez rumors. I think in a other world, you go ahead and you do yourself the favor of trying to get that in a sign and trade. I think Brook shouldn't be. If it's a sign trade, you obviously can only take back half the salary. And does that mean Brook's getting paid $7 million a year? 5 to 7? That's possible. It's not terrible. I think there's also the idea of Matisse Thybulle, if you can do a sign and trade there for him going to Portland. Detroit maybe for Simone Fontecchio. I do believe that he's not really a great fit here anymore. So let me hear your thoughts on that one before we continue. Kuminga is allegedly going to be a guy that could be signed and traded. And I wonder if he's a guy, the only really team that could go on and get him is the Brooklyn Nets, maybe Detroit. But if you're the Brooklyn Nets, what are you asking for? As this is a team that's going to be at 171 million projected salary. They're below the thresholds and they'll have all the exceptions available to them. To me, the biggest thing when you look at trying to flick Kuminga, and I think that is going to have to be a team like the Nets, as they're the only ones with salary. And we'll talk Pistons in a second, but I find it hard to believe you would go out and get yourselves into a situation where, I don't know, I think paying Kuminga whatever he thinks is worth is not enough. And it's just, let's sign and trade him, justifying at least something that we can work with. And you can only take half the salary back. So that's where I think, looking at the Nets roster, you would love to get Cam Johnson on this team. And the way to do that, if we go back, would have to be some sort of combination, sign and trade, which would be a non-simultaneous transaction, and then a second transaction to make the deal work. I think you would want to throw in probably either a combination of Santos or Post, or not Post, Santos or Waters, and with, of course, Kuminga, and that would probably get you to a little bit over half of Johnson's contract. But I don't know if they have the capital to get that then in terms of draft assets. So if you go over to Detroit, you're trying to find a team trying to dump a player, and that's how you would get Mr. Kuminga off your team. And you could always say that maybe they sign and trade Jonathan Kuminga to the Bucks for Brook Lopez. That's a possibility too. It gets a little trickier there. And however, that is something that they could do. And not to keep out of your, your mind. Now, the only other one that I think if they really wanted to get interesting could be a Jonathan Kuminga trade for like a Simone Fontecchio. I think that, again, would just be a bit, if they're just trying to find some shooting and some more size. To me, I think if they can continue to look at this where, look, they're going to bring back Looney. They're probably going to bring back Gary Payton. I believe both on veteran minimums. They like it. And they can use their full middle-level exception if they want to stay under their first apron. And that's after drafting someone with the 41st pick, which I think Maxime Renaud, if he's there, there's a few bigs that if they're back end of the draft available, I would go after. But to me, I think you look at this team, Brook Lopez, Quinn Post, Kevon Looney, I think you solve that. In the draft, you then go shooting. A Chaz Lanier could really fit well for them. As I said, their core's locked in. They need some center help, which I think by committee could work, and some bench depth. They have a manageable payroll, but I do believe if they miss on the center, run it back, or they can't trade Kuminga for some rotational value, they're going to be calling it second round at best. But with Curry, Butler, and Draymond all still productive, I think they have at least one punch left in them to go out and do it. They have very few picks, and they do have the Anderson and Waters trade exceptions, but they really can't do anything too risky to mess up what they have right here. And New Orleans could be another team that's selling. You gotta find a contract. If Kuminga wants 20, let's say somebody gives him 3 years, 20, I still think it's disgusting. Maybe it's the full mid-level exception. So we're just gonna look at $7 to $10 million just to give you guys an idea of what they could do before we wrap up this video. And I don't think John Konchar's money goes on too far. Okay, Ayo DeSumo could be a depth piece that they could go after if they wanted to sign and trade Kuminga, full mid-level exception. I think that one's a good one. You could do a Sean Tate. Nah, because you can sign and trade him. Jeff Green and, Jay Tate. I don't know if they can be sign trades for sign trades. I wonder. I just don't like the idea of those guys, or even Gary Harris. Now, and I don't like Atlanta going after him for George Niang. I think that's just too beneficial for the Warriors. So you'd have to think, man, it definitely becomes difficult, because the higher the salary goes, the less likely I think the team that would have the salary be interested in doing that. Like, maybe if you really wanted to take a risk on Matisse Thybulle, you do a sign and trade for Matisse Thybulle, and the Trailblazers take a chance on him. But I think Ayo DeSumo was the one that I liked the most. And then it becomes, the contracts all, because you're looking at guys between 7 to 12 million or 7 to 10 million, depending on how much Kuminga is going to make, which I think is going to be between 14 and 20 on the high side. I really think it's just going to be the mid-level exception. So, hear your thoughts on that one. Like, comment.
Yeah, basically, I just want to end the video right here.